needs to unite against all kinds of overt and covert backing of terror.
Vikram S, India's first privately developed rocket to be launched by the Indian Space Research Organisation from the spaceport in Sriharikota, about 115 kilometers from Chennai. Vikram S is one of the world's first few all-composite rockets that has 3D printed solid thrusters for spin stability of the launch vehicle.
It is indeed a new beginning, a new dawn, and shall I say, very appropriately as our team members have put it, a new prarambh in the journey of India's space program. And very many thanks to Honorable Prime Minister Modi ji, who has made this effort possible by opening up the space sector to public-private participation.
Kerala Governor Arif Mohammed Khan has hailed the decision of the Kerala court order to dismiss Priya Varghese as an associate professor of the Kannur University. Governor Khan said also take a look at the dig at the Chief Minister, saying that in Kerala, money, job and position is only for the cadre. He further added that Varghese wasn't even qualified enough to be a professor.
What I am interested in is that law must be upheld. And I am so happy that law has been upheld. A person who was not qualified to be appointed. Honorable High Court has come out in clear terms that she was not even qualified to be summoned for interview. So law has been upheld. That is what makes one happy.
25 students fell ill after an alleged chemical gas leak in a lab in Hyderabad's Kasturba Government College. Affected students were rushed to a hospital. Forensic teams also reached the spot to ascertain which gas got leaked. Prime Minister Modi will inaugurate the first greenfield airport in Arunachal Pradesh, Dhoni Apollo Airport, Holangi, Itanagar tomorrow. The foundation stone for this airport was laid by the Prime Minister himself in February 2019. Work on the airport has been completed within a short span of time despite the challenges due to the pandemic. Star table tennis player Manika Batra qualified for the semi-finals of the ongoing Asian Cup table tennis tournament. Now she's become the first woman from the country to make it to the semi-finals of the Asian Cup. She defeated China's counterpart in the quarter-finals with 4-3 set. Batra will be facing the winner of the match between Korea and Japan. Muslim community has backed a decision by the Qatar government to ban the sale of beer in stadiums just days before the World Cup starts in the Islamic country. As people gathered for the traditional Friday prayers in a mosque in central Doha, several commented on those visiting the host nation should respect the views and culture of those living there. In Islamabad, the High Court Chief Justice has said that as per intelligence reports, there were fears of another attack on the former Prime Minister of Pakistan, Imran Khan. He passed the remarks while hearing a petition filed by traders regarding road closures due to the party's protest. Remember, Imran Khan was injured during a rally that he was taking out. This was a long march in Wazirabad on the 3rd of November. Elizabeth Debicki may have won rave reviews for a portrayal of the late Princess Diana in the new season of the royal drama The Crown, but the Australian actress says the role felt insurmountable when she first took it on. When asked, she said that she tried her best with embodying the late Princess Diana in this latest season, season 5 of The Crown. Pankaj Tripathi will next be seen in Shri Atal Bihari Vajpayee's biopic under the direction of Ravi Jadhav, produced by Bharushali Studios. The makers announced the film titled Main Rahun Ya Na Rahun, Ye Desh Rehna Chahiye. The film will revolve around the political journey of Vajpayee. Speaking about playing Atal Bihari Vajpayee, Pankaj Tripathi expressed, "It's my honor to portray such a humane politician on screen." And in Seen Unseen today, human-animal encounters are often scary and life-threatening. But other occasions, it turns delightful and memorable. This is one such video where a deer visited a tea stall. We're leaving you with these visuals. Thanks a lot for watching.
മുത്തണോ? താല്പര്യമില്ല.
25 years of glory for Bharat, as we're trying to re-envision ourselves, find our roots, know our roots, and perhaps become the Bharat that we should be, or where we should have been 75 years down the line, but can we be there by 2047? So we'll talk about all of this. This is as much as I'm going to speak today because I am in very, very august company, and I have to thank right at the outset, with the bottom of my heart, all our guests for making the effort to be here in studio for this very special effort. First up, Ram Madhavji, person who needs no introduction, an author, and these days he's become a voracious author, writer. His latest book is in my hand, and we'll talk about that also, Partition Freedom. He makes a few points there. Jnani, student of Vedanta, if I may say, and of course somebody who's phenomenal in putting concepts right, philosophy, and of course what our civilization and our roots teach us. Tushyan Sridharji.
Namaskar.
He's also the producer of the movie Shakuntalam in Sanskritam, which he shot through COVID. You must watch it. Phenomenal. He put mainstreaming Sanskritam, which is phenomenal. Pandit Satish Sharma ji is a regular with us. I always connected with you in the UK. Now you are here with me in the studio. Welcome to Bharat, like I said when you joined us, and you've been doing the rounds, you've been speaking at a lot of places. Thank you very much for making the time.
It's been a pleasure coming home.
Thank you. Yeah, you are home, but you're also setting certain narratives right there, especially with what they tried to do with Rashmi Samant in Cambridge. He himself is a Cambridge alumni, and you've tried to sort those out. You've tried to raise the voice. And of course, with Leicester, we'll talk about the NCRI report also. And Neeraj Jatri, Aapki Brainwashed Republic was one of the first books which, when I read and I said, oh my God. So I still remember that. A teacher himself and somebody who's very articulate. His YouTube videos set matters right, present the right perspective, facts as they should be. Thank you very much, Neeraj.
Thanks, Anand, for calling me.
Let's start with multiple issues. First up, Ram Madhavji, the hot burning issue as we are speaking is those who come out and say Savarkar was a servant of the British Empire. How long will they continue to say this? And why is it that it's only Swatantraveer Savarkar ji who's singled out?
You see, it shows the ignorance of those leaders. They are not well read, they are very poorly read actually. Obviously, they did not have any proper educational qualification. That apart. I don't get into that. They do not know the history of this country, history of their own leadership. You know, talking of remission was an accepted practice throughout the independence movement. It was not just Savarkar who sought remission first in 1913 and then in 1920. Before him, Mahadev Govind Ranade wrote similar letter seeking remission. He was a top Congress leader. When I am taking up these names, not with any intent to insult them or anything. I am placing historical facts before. 1912, a remission letter was written by none other than Lokmanya Tilak. Now, would Mr. Rahul Gandhi say the similar things about them also? And in Savarkar's case, it was Gandhi's recommendation to Savarkar that you please write. People like you should not waste your life in the jail. Your services are needed for the country, for the society. Please write. This is an accepted practice. The British used to, from time to time, grant remission to political prisoners. These were not criminals. These were political prisoners. But poor man, this guy doesn't know the history of the country, doesn't know history of his own movement, and keeps shooting his mouth. He doesn't create any problem to us because we have enough facts. He thoroughly embarrasses his own party and his own party alliance partners. Now today Shiv Sena had to come out and plead with him, no, don't sow those things, which is an ally. So I think that Mr. Rahul Gandhi, first of all, should read history properly and read the history of his own party and India's independence movement properly before shooting his mouth.
I beg to remain your Royal Highness's faithful servant. This is not Savarkarji. This is Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi. And this is from the collection, letters of Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi. It's a book, it's a collection of his letters that he wrote. So was this the accepted norm that time, Pandit ji? That this is how, like abhi hum likhte hain, yours faithfully likhte the, phir chhod diya. Then it was yours sincerely, wo bhi chhod diya. Now we write best and thank you. So it keeps evolving. But was this the form of addressing the crown?
It is just conventional syntax, isn't it? How many times does anybody actually think, what does yours faithfully mean? We write it without even thinking and it's done and dusted. And that's the manner in which communication happened. But just picking up on what Ram Madhavji said, Napoleon said, never interrupt an enemy when he is arranging for his own downfall. So we should invite Rahul Gandhiji to give more and more pravachan. I think it's a really valuable contribution.
But is it done because he's ignorant, like Ram Madhavji said, Neeraj-ji? Or do you believe that there are certain people who want to distort narratives, or they want to push a particular narrative? So from history and historians to distorians, that's also another aspect.
Yeah. See, what happens is that Rahul Gandhi is working on the idea that let us pull others down so that we look better than them, and which is a very foolish strategy as far as politics goes. Now what he is thinking of is that the Congress legacy belongs to him only, whereas it is not a fact. The Congress before independence is not the Congress which is right now. It is a fiefdom created for a particular family. But anyway, why is he targeting Savarkar is because if he is not going to get that counterfoil, then his own legacy, or what he perceives to be his legacy, that tends to get dwarfed in front of what Savarkar stood for and the kind of torture, the kind of pain that he suffered. You have to be utterly inhuman to say or to try to belittle somebody as tall as Savarkar. That is what I would say.
One would not ask this question, that why is it out of all the big names that we know of our freedom struggle, it is Veer Savarkar who was kept the farthest away from the mainland? ये basic question तो मन में आता होगा ना रामादेव जी की.
But not he alone. There were several others who were also sent to Andaman and Nicobar. Those who were considered by the British as the dangerous people. In fact, outside their cells, there used to be a letter D, big D written, meaning they were dangerous revolutionaries. They were sent there early, before Savarkar also, after Savarkar also. But Rahul Gandhi was also factually incorrect when he said Savarkar was there for 2-3 years. No, he was there for 1 full decade. Between 1947 and 1950, we were a dominion.
Correct.
As dominion, we were still under the British royals, like the Queen. So those kind of addresses used to be there. In 1948, Nehru wrote a letter to the Queen. He wrote in that your Her Majesty, your Majesty, your whatever was the convention at that time. So when what people like Rahul Gandhi are trying to do is the same old thing, that to present the Hindu icons like Savarkar in a very bad light, as though they were compromised figures, they had no role in India. Gandhi herself, not once, twice. Once when he died in 1966, the other time was on a special occasion in 1980. Twice she was on record praising Savarkar's work. So that's why Rahul Gandhi should read his own history, his own forefathers properly first, before, attacking. I mentioned Nehru always used to write the same thing to Her Majesty, your most loyal servant, about which he was complaining about Savarkar.
Correct.
Nehru used to write the same thing. In 1948, there was a letter Nehru wrote to the...
But Ramadji, let's just take this forward and say this is also narrative setting, isn't it? When you take just one particular person in narrative setting, then now the other narrative setting is RSS is Hindutva, BJP's Hindutva is different from Hindu, Hindu is different from Hindutva. Let me start with you and then I'll take that to Dushanji.
Okay, not because he is trying to set that kind of a discourse, but generally let me say that Hindutva is Hinduism in action. Hinduism, if it is a philosophy, great philosophy, if I were to apply it to my 21st century living, how I live today as a Hindu is Hindutva. There is no distinction between these two things. One is a philosophy, two is the way of life, how I live that philosophy today. Only greatness about that philosophy is it changes with the changing times. You can apply it to the most modern times. So I consider these two things as not two separate things. One is philosophy, one is its actual manifestation.
Or would you say they are trying to separate Hinduism and Hindutva as a philosophy and a way of life vis-a-vis the politicization of Hindutva or political Hindutva which the RSS BJP is propagating? Just like you say Islam and political Islam.
Okay, political Hindutva is also not a new argument, you know. Jinnah used to call Gandhi a Hindutvadi. It started then. Hindutva or Hinduism was thoroughly used by Congress leaders also from time to time. When it suited their politics, they used it. So you see, that's why this whole the whole new thesis that Rahul Gandhi pretends to be, forwarding, is actually a very meaningless thing. At the end of the day, it is helping BJP, as Sharma ji was saying. I mean, we always say that we have three great leaders in BJP. One is Modi ji, second is Amit Shah ji, and third is Rahul Gandhi. So the great vote catchers for us. But that apart, at a broader level, we should understand this mischief of trying to create this distinction between Hindutva is bad, but Hinduism is good.
Before I bring in Dushyant ji on the Adhyatma aspect of it and the history aspect of it, Pandit ji, the dismantled global Hindutva, this entire movement which happened, showed the erstwhile RSS uniform, RSS march, because they don't wear half pants anymore, but that's what was shown in that. So clearly the aim was there, but what happened in the conference was something very different.
It's noticeable that this identity creation of a straw man that you can put in front of people and say, please hate. This is what we're seeing. We saw this happen here in Bharat as well. RSS Nazi Hindutva has been thrown around a long time. But recently we saw, unexpectedly, exactly this same straw man on the streets of Leicester. There were hate attacks. They wanted to justify them. They created a completely false Hindutva identity and presented it not only to their own population but to the world. And so it's the same toolkit, it's the same process. Somehow we have to vilify, we have to make the subject of hatred this Hindutva identity. None of them have any interest in what does Hindutva actually mean. You've described it so beautifully there that it's Hindu principles, the tattva of what it is to be a Hindu, manifest in the daily existence of all of us. I'm a Hindutvadi, but I'm not a terrorist, I'm not a radical, I'm not an extremist. I know what I am. I define what I am, and nobody else has the right to redefine that for me or for any other Hindu. In the West, you can even define your pronoun. Call me she, he, they, this, all of that. And yet en bloc, they come together and say, oh, no. We can define what a Hindu is. It's a terrible thing. It's a nasty thing. We have to do something to save the world from it. And it's nothing more than that. It's the same tired colonialists, supremacists toolkit of how to target somebody who's a threat for you, how to get a lot of consensus behind you, and then attack them. We saw it when the West attacked Iraq. Do you remember how terrible Saddam Hussein was? We've seen it. The Jews have always been targeted in this manner. And now, what we're going to see, I call it peak hatred. We're going to see peak hatred going all the way to 2024. And then afterwards, I think we will see anti-Hinduism decline. But we should deny other people who are not Hindus even the opportunity and the authority to define us. They don't have that authority unless we give it to them.
So now let me ask Dushyant ji to define Hindutva, and whether Hindu is bharatiya or is it a Persian lugat misnomer, as one of the Karnataka leaders turned around and said that it's a dirty word.
Anand, very happy to be with you and the esteemed panel members. Generally there is a practice in Sanatana Dharma of performing havans, homams. So you keep repeating the same mantra time and again. It's called avritti. So this definition of Hindu and Hinduism, even if you wake me up in the middle of the night, I'll be telling, because I've been telling this so many times. But for the benefit of the viewers, listeners, there are many learners, avid learners. The word Hindu has two different ways that it can be derived. One, when it comes from the West. When I say West, I'm not talking about the US and Canada, large parts of Middle East and the European subcontinent. and the other connotation comes when it comes from China, which is our east. So when it comes from the west, it came in terms of geography. So this entire geographical land, which was to the side of Sindhu, in Sanskritam, Sindhu is a river. Sindhu actually means the ocean as well. So when the river looked so wide, people thought momentarily that this river is the ocean. So salt is referred to as Saindhavam because it comes from Sindhu. It is derived from ocean. So this large piece of land, geographical mass, right from Kanyakumari to the tall ranges of Himalayas, that which extends till Brahmadesham, which is Myanmar, which was all called for the people from that side. Europeans, the Middle East, people who came from the Sumerian, the Mesopotamian civilization, is the land of Sindhu. And it is a practice known in the Indian language itself, which is blatantly seen today, that certain letters are absent. For example, in Tamil, Ra is not found in any other language. The letter Va is not found in Bengali. So every Va is replaced with Ba. Similarly, very, very possible that the word Sa was replaced with Ha. One. When it comes from China, it is a lot more authentic because Hyunzang says this land which is the land of stable knowledge. In Jyotishya Shastram, the graha who is responsible for stability of knowledge is Indu, which is moon. So everything right from Chandrama Manaso Jataha to Chandramauli, who's Shiva, everything is associated with the moon as well. We have many festivals from Paurnima to Amavasya going from Indu. So this is referred to as the land of Indu, moon. Interestingly, this sentence of Hyunzang has been verbatim quoted by Pandit Sri Jawaharlal Nehru in the Glimpses of World History, where he says this land of the Indu later became Hindu. So let's not go till Persian, let's not go till the languages of the Middle East. The Sanskrit word itself is Hindu. Now, so this Hindu, Sindhu is Hindu, later has a nest to it. For example, Anand, just for the knowledge of the listeners, I'm sure many of them will be very well learned. In the Upanishads, it's stated Satyam Jnanam Anantam Brahma. While commenting, the Acharya state Satyatva, Jnanatva, Anantatva. The Tva is a suffix which means ness. Cow-ness is Gotva. Similarly, to be a Hindu is Hindutva. Now the beauty is, the civilization and the country, Anand, is much, much bigger than any political party, any individual. So, in the course of attacking a political person, a political party, inadvertently or advertently, certain political leaders resort to dehumanizing, abusing the religion itself, which I think, all that I can do as a person who preaches about the scriptures is pray to Hindu who blesses with stable knowledge to add stability to their minds.
Since we were talking about Savarkar, it was Savarkar who gave a very beautiful definition to this word Hindu. In fact, his Hindutva book starts with that shloka, Asindhu Sindhu Paryanta, Yasya Bharata Bhumika, Pitrubhu Punyabhuschaiva Savai Hinduriti Smrutaha. Meaning, starting from Himalayas right down to the Indian Ocean, Hindu Mahasagar, in this vast geographical territory called Bharat, he called it Bharat. Yasya Bharata Bhumika is Bharat Bhumi. Those who consider this land as Pitrubhumi or Punyabhumi. Now, Pitrubhumi is not our concept. It's a Russian concept. Soviets used to call their country as fatherland. But when Savarkar used Pitrubhumi, he did not use it in the context of what Stalin used or others used. In his mind, Pitrubhumi meant the land of my forefathers, land of my ancestors. And Punyabhumi, because it's the land of my ancestors, it's sacred to me. Now, that is Hindu. Why should Rahul Gandhi or anybody have any objection to this simple principle? So, there Dushyant's point comes very relevant because you have certain political problem with a party or a political ideology or an ideology. You should not blame the entire culture, civilization and identity of the people of this land. But again I said, it requires a great thinking, intellect and mind and all that, which sometimes is not available with some of these guys. What can you do?
No, but it's interesting that when the Nazis were branded for what they did to the Jews, and it was an extension of Hitler, the Jews are now getting isolated, or the othering happened when they became Israel.
Yeah.
Okay, in this case what we are seeing, Neeraj ji, and it's something which Rajiv Malhotra ji is very also written, that a lot of the Western concepts are now being juxtaposed and so implanted, replacing Hindu, Brahminism, Dalits, so Africans and blacks, that is Dalits, white supremacists are Brahminism, so that is happening. And where the way Jews were being slaughtered or Nazis, so Nazi Hindu. What is Nazi Hindu? You're drawing a difference between nationalist and patriot because of the way the Brits defined Hitler as a nationalist fascist. So an American turns around and says, I'm a patriot, that's brilliant, wow. But one of us turns around and says, I'm a nationalist, oh, he's a fascist, he's a Nazi and a Nazi Hindu. See, this branding has happened. Why is this happening? What is the motive?
Okay. Since we are talking about parallels between Jews and Hindus, I think we need to address the two elephants in the room. This otherization started with Christianity, and Islam has continued the same legacy. Now, whether I am a Hindutva or Hinduism proponent, let us try to discuss it this way. I'm just an ordinary guy, and I'm trying to find out my place in the scheme of the things. So what I do is I pick up Bible, and then I pick up Quran. What I find out is that both of them are otherizing me. One is calling me an infidel, the other one is calling me a kafir. So now what am I supposed to do? Because so far I was being just another guy on the street who is just paying his taxes, taking care of his family, buying his car and doing all those normal things. But now I find out that I am in the middle of a civilizational battle in which I never had any say and I was not even aware of it. And now I start rebutting the narrative that was present till now. That what is a Hindu? Hinduism means cow, caste and maybe idols. That was up to which it was reduced. But now I am trying to look back at them, that here are two books which are being followed by more than 50% of the humanity, and they are calling me worthy to be killed, wajibul qatl. So when I try to stand up and counter that narrative, then they say, oh, this is Hindutva. So that is what Ram Madhav is saying, that when Hinduism comes into action, because when we look at our icons, let us look at Lord Ram, let us look at Lord Krishna, what were they doing? They were minding their own business, but when a problem is thrust upon them, they are going to react to it. Whether it is violent, depending on the conditions, one has to stand up for his or her own rights. A group of goons come to my place and says that I'm going to rob your money, I'm going to abduct your women. What am I supposed to do? I'm not supposed to meditate at that point of time. I'm supposed to rebut them, react and rebut them. And that is where this binary comes from, because they have this unfinished agenda. Now, what is surprising is that we normally don't discuss. Islam has its declared objective that they are going to convert the entire world into Darul Islam. Christianity says convert everybody into a Christian. So that means I am at stake, my entire civilization is at stake and I am being attacked. How do I respond to it? I have to take a stand. The moment you start taking a stand, they say, no, this is not Hinduism, this is Hindutva. That is what they've been doing for so long, and this is what we need to address right now, that yes, we are going to assert ourselves and we are not going to tolerate those hateful ideologies which create a binary between the entire humanity, between two hostile groups which are always antagonistic to each other, that one has to crush the other or suppress the other and convert them into their own worldview. This is not Hinduism, this is not even humanity. Because now on the other hand, when we look at our scriptures, there is no bigotry, there is no binary of us versus them. So Hinduism or Hindutva, whatever you may call, is a global ideology, is an all-encompassing ideology, but that does not serve the purpose of these two biggest blocks of Christianity and Islam. That is why I think we are under a relentless attack. Earlier it was with the use of weapons, now it is with the help of terminology. That is what I would say. So we are in a narrative war where that is why this artificial binary or artificial boundary is being created between Hinduism and Hindutva.
Would you say that they made the fight academic when they could not destroy the civilization with the sword? Say from the 1000 AD, 900 AD to 1000 AD till about the 21st century, till independence. That's been happening. India's been regularly invaded. This Bharata Bhumi has been regularly invaded through different forces. However, they must have fought the crusades between them, but they also came here saying this land needs to be conquered. Its people need to be civilized or changed. But they came here looking at the prosperity and knowledge here. Panditji.
Anandji, the deception that was perpetrated, actually it's in two worlds. The people who came here and stole, when they went back to their nations and created their elites and their ruling classes, which were always the minority, they then told the majority in England, the majority in France, the majority in the Dutch people and everybody else, they went and told them a different story. They went and told them a story which elevated them morally. They said, we were the custodians, we were the guardians, we were the saviors. And if you've built your structures of power on that foundation, the last thing you want is a bunch of Hindus coming up and saying, well, actually, the truth of what you did is this. You raped, you pillaged, you stole, you lied, you desecrated, you decimated. You did every single horror upon our nation and our people. They don't want to hear that. And how do they then react? They react by saying, oh, they're terrible people. They're liars. You can't believe them. And so this narrative war is very real. If you can't occupy people's lands by force, then the only alternative is to try and occupy their minds by deceit. Now, in front of Acharyaji, I'm going to talk about Naam Roop. You know, we talked about Tattva. One of the things that they're petrified of is that we have the tradition of seeking the Tattva, the depth, the essence of everything. Whereas what they use is Naam Roop, name and form. They're always saying, what name can we give to this little thing to separate it from everything else? Sikhs, Khalistan. Right? Hindus, Hindutvadis, etc. It's the same approach. But this civilizational war, it's global now. There are boundaries which are national, but this war is being fought everywhere. Every Hindu, whether it's in California, whether they're in the United Kingdom, whether they're in Europe, or whether they're in Bharat, is now under attack by this narrative war. And what's at stake is not just Hindus. What's at stake is global civilization. We have got the capacity to articulate Satya, the Satya of our existence. You know, we have a belief, not a belief, an understanding, a darshan, that it's actually a great thing to be born a human being.
Yeah.
Right? That the Atma is perfect. And that's totally contrary to all of their power structures, which say a human being is flawed and we have the solution. You know, their whole ideology is built on a snake oil sales pitch. That we've got something to sell you to make you right. Can you imagine how threatened they must feel? So you're right, this is a narrative battle. It has no boundaries, and it's not one in which a person can be a spectator. Whether you want to or not, you're going to wake up to find yourself in an adversarial situation. And the sooner we work out how to respond in that adversarial situation, the better, not just for Hindus, not just for Bharat, but for global humanity, because that's what's at stake.
True, but if you were to see with each passing generation, Dushyantji, we are just being removed or moved further away. We're drifting further away from our own Jnanastambhas or our own foundations and roots. Like J. Sai Deepak has written somewhere, and he was telling me that just about 115 years ago, a British Kotwal got an update from a master in a village asking, what do you teach and where do you teach? So he said, under the village banyan tree, I am teaching them in Sanskritam, I am teaching them Vedic mathematics, science, etc. 115 years ago. But 20 years later, we're not learning that in our modern education system. So if we have to fight a narrative battle, we need to be rooted, right? Do you agree or disagree that today largely people are uprooted? How do we find our way back?
Two important findings or observations that I have had in the last 10 years as a public speaker on ancient scriptures. In the last 5 years, the demographics of people less than the age of 40 listening to traditional lectures has been increasing. There's been a beautiful awareness, the enlightenment campaign that's happening organically on its own. There's no denial about it. I'm witness to it. The second thing is, while you were talking about this transition from ancient Guru Sishya Parampara to the modern education system, the way we see it, we are recipients of it, we are victims in a way. That's because 15 generations before, when our ancestors found a lot of merit in the education system, the Western education system, the transition was very abrupt, Anand. So it was like leaving away Satyam Vada, Dharmam Chara, Matradevo Bhava, Pitrudevo Bhava from Taittreya Aranyakam and Upanishad, and suddenly going to finding the case of Jack and Jill who were tumbling down the hill. So it was a sudden transition. I feel now the transition from the modern education system, if I perceived your question right, to the rooting of our Sanatana Dharma should not be abrupt again. Again, we should not end up going from the concrete rooms of our school suddenly to a banyan tree. I feel we should have a balance of both, because to reach out to the outer world, we need foreign languages. But to get rooted, we should appreciate the Indian classical languages. So we should have the best of both. It shouldn't be a sudden transition. That will be a big accident. It will lead to a disaster. But I feel as much as a child learns about maybe the fountainhead of Ayn Rand or something like that, they should also learn about Narayaniyam of Bhattadri and Raghuvamsham of Kalidasa. It should happen on both. And there are many change makers who are doing it. They are unsung heroes, of course, waiting for their Padma Awards. A lot of them have been celebrated. There are many people who are doing such silent work, such good work. So I think the transition should not be drastic. It will be a disaster. It should be very organic, so that the students do not realize that they are actually learning the best of both worlds.
But children today are celebrating Halloween while saying don't play Holi, don't burst crackers in Diwali. You see what's happening, Ram Madhavji?
True, the education system in India until about 2 centuries back was very advanced, and it's very widespread. Contrary to the general belief that India was an illiterate country, that Adam report, One Teacher, One School, which was done in the early 19th century and about the 18th century India, showcases schools in almost every cluster of villages. And that education system was not backward and today is modern. It's not like that. It was a very well developed education system we had. Dharampalji's Beautiful Tree is one book that actually presents that whole education system in India. What happened post independence was that we depended too much on the Western educational system. Of course, it gave us a lot of benefits. Today, if CNN News 18 is thriving in India, it is because you had some Western education system here. Otherwise, we would be having only local language channels in India, unlike in France or some other country.
No, we won't have Indianized English.
Of course, that's the beauty of Indians. They Indianize everything. But I tell you something more important, Anand. In India, training people in Indian civilizational, historical, religious and cultural values was never left alone to the schools. It was the responsibility undertaken even by the caste associations, even by our temples, even of course by family. I mean, most of our children learnt about our scriptures from their households, from their grandparents, from their families, the traditions that families followed and all that. We have today destroyed all those institutions. Temples no longer serve that purpose. We don't have any such situation in our families today. We are nuclear families. So, transmitting India's age-old or rich cultural, civilizational, religious heritage has now become the responsibility only of the schools. And schools today are not equipped with that kind of a thing. Our education system doesn't permit that. Until now, until new education system came, we were not even allowed to teach religious texts in our schools.
Correct.
So, we need to totally, first of all, revamp education also, so that we can hand down this great treasure to the future generations, and then you can talk about this narrative war. Today what is happening is, one woke question is posed before a student, is unable to answer it.
Correct.
He is not equipped to answer it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because physics, science, you have made the statement कि physics, science कुछ भी पूछ लो जवाब दे देते हैं. Culture पे हम लोग
Yeah, that is what we've been saying. When there were student exchange programs, I could just look at the body language of our students and somebody who was from, say, America or Japan. They had this lot of conviction about their own culture. But we've been deracinated through and through. The question that you said was that about rooting.
Yeah.
So, what comes as, it should not come actually as a surprise also, that our institutions are so large that they carry a lot of inertia with them. So, that is why this system, which has uprooted our entire civilization, is still continuing, I would say even with more force now. And what we need to do is we have to ensure that not only we are able to transmit the entire legacy of our ancestors to this coming generations, at the same time it should be an amalgamation of what has been going on in West also. Let us include that. But the point that Ram Madhavji was also making is that it has been such a long time for which we've been studying this outdated system, that as a result we notice an almost barren land in our country as far as innovation is concerned. We don't have any Nobel laureates as far as science is concerned. In most of the fields we don't have any Nobel laureates. What is the reason for that? The same education system which we've been following since independence, I would say, because earlier we did not have any control. But since independence, the leap that we should have taken, we did not take that. And that has resulted in this sorry state that we still are acting as tech coolies for the world, but not creating our own intellectual institutions, we can say, or innovations we are not producing. So unless and until we root them into our legacy, our way of teaching, we are going to produce those barren minds which will take pride in being a coolie for somebody else, but not producing something which will be more enduring for us.
No, but we are plagued with this validation, isn't it, Panditji? We have the Navagraha Homam. So that means we know there are Navagrahas. Why do we need a 16th century Galileo to say that there are planets that revolve around the sun? We know that.
That is the narrative.
We've talked about the erratic behavior of Pluto. All of it is there, but we need. आज भी देखे ना सर, इंडियन चैनल कुछ भी कहे, इंडियन साइंटिस्ट कुछ भी कहे, उधर क्या पेपर आया है, वो क्या बोल रहा है, वेस्ट, what does the West say? Why do we have this problem of validation?
So I'm very much more optimistic.
जी.
Okay, and I look at our family of Hindus as people recovering from trauma. And if you look at them from the psychologist's perspective or the psychiatrist's perspective, suddenly you see that there is a deep-rooted fear, and that fear is justified and valid. And so there is a desire to be appreciated. And we have been taught that being appreciated is a wonderful thing. You know, how often do we appreciate Sundar Pichai, right? We think, oh yes, balle balle in Punjabi, right? But being appreciated is a step towards being respected. That's different. Once we have learned that, okay, being appreciated gives you that validation and that you have value just as a being, we then have to make the journey to being respected. When you make the journey to being respected, then you are healed and then you are wholesome. Now, I've done a few talks to university students over the last few days. I've been very, very fortunate to interact with a large number of students. And the key is in our teachers. Right? We have to be able to get them to inspire students. In a group of students at Indus University, there were some 300 students. At the beginning of the session, they were very wary. You know, they looked and thought, you know, who is this and what's he going to say? And they were very reserved. But I saw such potential in that group, that group of people as individuals. By the end of the session, they were asking questions openly, and many questions which were deeply personal. And that's what our Vidya has. We can light the flame in their minds as opposed to pouring a whole load of stuff that we have to fill it up with. When we make that transition, you watch how quickly we will see a renaissance. Also, it's worth remembering that when a body is infected with a virus, it only takes a tiny little bit of injection of an antiviral ingredient and the whole body starts to heal because it wants to heal. Our family of Hindus want to heal, our children want to heal, but we need to be able to give them that little injection and then see what happens.
But we won't be able to give that little injection till the time this mentality is padho or niklo, Ram Madhavji. See, in our families today, what's the story? You talked about appreciating Sundar picture, then the next thing is go to the US, that's where you have your thing. Most of the families, urban India and a large part of Punjab today has migrated. The next generation which is going to turn old is here, but because the previous generation, the current generation is all settled abroad. Now, till we have this padho or niklo mentality, how are we going to give back to our country, or how are we going to nurture our own traditions, roots, etc.?
So for almost 70 years after independence, we lived in the belief that there was nothing great in our past to be proud of.
Self-loathing.
A sort of self-rejection was, if you want to understand the roots of that self-rejection, you must read the Constituent Assembly debates. It comes out so glaringly that there was one section which was saying that let us build a country that has its roots in its own civilizational value system and all. There was another section in the Constituent Assembly which insisted that no, there was nothing much to learn from India, we better look up to the West. So ultimately the other section prevailed, and we built a system in India, education system and everything, which was self-loathing, self-rejecting. Atma Nyunata, we call it in it.
Yeah.
At least today, the present government is trying to introduce an education system that allows for freedom for a Dushyant Sridhar to do something through his own initiative. He can teach about our values and all. It was not allowed. We always thought that Plato and Aristotle were great. They were great. Nobody is denying that. But so was Chanakya, contemporary, or even earlier. We equate Chanakya with Machiavelli. And what was Machiavelli? So somehow that whole feeling that we didn't have anything great to be proud of was injected or taught to us. Probably his book was about that, brainwashing and all. We were brainwashed into believing that we have nothing great about our country, but this country has so much. A country with 5 millennia history cannot be just a country without anything. It has so much. But do you know, who did study or research into that so much was not Indians. How many universities in India have Indic studies departments today?
No one.
That study happens elsewhere in the Western countries.
The Germans do it more.
And thousands of our scriptures, manuscripts are today lying in Germany, lying in USA, lying in Europe. We don't have them. We don't do study of them. So there a lot needs to change now. Luckily, that change is slowly happening. Those who are trying for that such a change, like Dushyant Sridhar, are today getting at least a platform here in your channel. When were they getting that opportunity also in the past? So a good thing is, good change is happening. It is very important for India.
Anand, just one thing.
Yeah, please.
Sorry to interrupt.
No.
Just one instant.
Ji.
Nowadays, what is happening is, I saw it in the textbook of my son when he was in probably first class, that who proved that Earth is spherical in shape. There was name of some European, and what was the justification? That he started from the tip of Europe, completed a circle and came back to where he started from, and that proved in 15th century that Earth was spherical. This is what is being taught. Now what is the problem with this? One is, there is no point on the surface of Earth where you will start and then come back to the same place, right? So it is totally lie. Second, now this is being taught in a nation where we call geography by Bhugol.
Yeah.
And even in 10th century, when Al-Biruni came over here, he's written his book, Kitabul Hind. He is telling that the Brahmins have calculated the circumference of Earth, and he's given the value of pi which was being used. So try to imagine, in our country where we knew that Earth is spherical for such a long time, here our kids are being taught that some European in 15th or 16th century, and in fact this was the time when Europeans used to think that once you set sail you are going to fall off the edge of the Earth.
Yeah.
That is the irony that we are facing with.
No, that's true, because the history is rife with the fact that in our riyasats and all, Dushyantji, as you speak, the doors always open inward. So even into our temples and into our forts, the doors always open inward. So there is always somebody from within opened the door. So our own education systems and those who followed our educational policies, if they have decided that we want to set termites into our brains, and like Vijaya Vishwanathan ji says, kuppai is that they want to teach, that's dirt. So then that's what's going to happen. Dushyant ji.
Very quickly, Anand, 2 points.
Ji.
One, in the due course of explaining Agnihotra, Aryabhatta says Chaturadhika Shatam Ashtagunam Dvasashti Ayutascha 62,832 divided by 20,000. Use this value to create the Agni Kundam, which is 3.14. So just in the due course of explaining Agnihotra, he talks about the value of pi. Just while describing the holy sandals of Ranganatha in the 13th century, Vedanta Deshika states, I am solving the knight steward problem of the chessboard, which is called Chaturanga Turanga Bandham. So we have wonders in our past, there is no doubt, but there is a flaw in our ancestors. They were very humble. See, Vidya Dadati Vinayam is a statement that we often keep stating. We have wonderful content, we have never packaged it in the right way. See, for example, I often tell some of my listeners, scintillate, scintillate, you minuscule asteroid in the vast expanse of the splendid sky. You know what is this? Twinkle, twinkle, little star.
Little star.
So you complicate simple things, you are deemed an intellectual. So probably our ancestors had that blemish of not exaggerating simple things, which the West did. One. Second thing, while we are talking about this narrative building across the spectrum, across the intellectual class as well as the political class about the word Hindu, Hindutva. Now I am sitting in Delhi, Anand, with you. But there has been always a complaint from the people of the South that most of the channels are very Delhi-centric. So that's where I would like to state that there has been a huge narrative to distance the ancient Tamil literature from Hinduism itself. Nobody has concentrated in the last 70 years, and it's so deep-rooted now. When someone comes and tells me that Thiruvalluvar was not a Hindu, the Alvars were not Hindu, the Ilangovadigal was not a Hindu, I'm just left to look myself into a mirror whether this is daytime or whether I am dreaming. Because all the scriptures of the Tamil literature, Tamil, one of the oldest languages which our Honorable Prime Minister has often quoted, there's a Kashi Tamil Sangamam which is happening as well. It is more Hindu than what Hindu can get. It is more Vedic than what Vedic can get. But sadly, in the last 70 years, that narrative has been let to grow so much, and it's so deep-rooted that it is taking a lot of efforts from us to actually come. That's where Sri Ram Madhavji said that Dushyant is getting a platform. I'm getting a platform to tell that I come from the beautiful land of the Tamil, which is more Vedic than Hindu than any other scripture. So that narrative should also change. But again, Anand, just to conclude my point, in those days when there used to be a premise set for a debate, you remember the days of Adi Shankara where fresh garlands would be put around people who were debating, and as they would lose, the flowers would wither. So today we need to have a CCTV camera recording of such narratives, and people who lose should write it on black and white and say, I will not bring this topic again. Again, this question of Hindu, Tamil, Vedic should not be asked. They should give it in writing. Let them lead a happy life. Let's play for their livelihood. But they should not rake up this topic because it's an intellectual debate. If you do not have facts to present, you should have the audacity to lose.
But I think we should be broader in our vision and our aspiration. You know, we talk about Hindus becoming deracinated and challenged when they go out into the wider world. Remember, the tattva of Christianity, for example, can be summarized probably in 2 documents. One was the Code of Theodosius, which is what was established to wipe out every pagan religion right across the Roman Empire. It's their equivalent of the Manusmriti in its worst forms. And the second is probably the doctrine of discovery, which was no non-Christian on the planet is a human being. They're part of the animal kingdom, so you can take whatever you want. So if you were looking for a Christian tva, I've just given it to you. All right? So that's one pushback that we can make use of. The second thing is also remember that throughout the Western world, the divine feminine has been rejected wholesale, right across the board. What a gift to be able to share with the world that half of humanity is equally divine as the other half of humanity. And I say that because the Western world, the majority of people are so thirsty. You know, I have friends who have said to me, we prefer to watch the Indian news channels because now we get a totally different perspective to the rubbish that we've been fed by the BBC, etc., etc. We can do the same in the Adhyatmic and the civilizational sphere. There is an appetite for what we have refined over thousands of years to get the essence of existence. And all we have to do is share it in the manner that Sanatana Dharma teaches us.
Yes.
It's natural, it's healthy, people become happy, they become less radicalized, less crazy. What a gift to share. It's purely natural. We should do it. Let's bring the Vishwa Guru within the next decade.
Well, but the challenge is that we need to first educate ourselves. We need to first tell people this is what you need to, this is how you need to approach a subject. This is how there is what they said, tapasya. That is also, tapas is also research, isn't it? It's not just penance.
Tapaha alochane dhatu. Contemplating or internalizing is tapaha.
Tapaha. And then also the aspect of research. So in terms of if somebody tells you something, should you just take it or should you just go back and say, did he write? Who wrote? What happened? This whole aspect of shodh.
Swadhyaya.
Swadhyam.
Well, I can simplify it even further for you. I say to parents who ask me, Satishi, how can we connect our children to Dharma? I say, well, you can't give them something you don't have. You know,
Correct.
you have to acquire it first. And if you acquire it, the children will not think of you as a hypocrite. Because children are the greatest hypocrisy detectors, aren't they? And if you acquire it, what a benefit in your own life as well. So it's not complicated at all. And we need more and more of our parents to do the work.
But teaching spirituality is not cool. You're not liberal.
You know, point comes to that, you know, how do you present it to a woke generation?
Yeah.
A very modern, ever questioning generation today. They question everything that you propose to the generation. You know, for example, the concept of God. In the West, God is supposed to be formless, right? In Semitic religion, no form. If you have a form, you will be killed. It is blasphemy. For that matter, there is no blasphemy in Hinduism.
Correct.
As far as I know.
Correct.
Probably Dushanji knows better. No blasphemy, concept of blasphemy. There is no form to God, but it is always He. Read all the Semitic scriptures. If it is formless, how can it be He?
Yeah.
Why not it be she?
You're using logic.
Whereas
now.
in our spirituality, I am coming to that. In our spirituality, God is at one level formless. It is that. When it is in form, it is Ardhanarishwar.
Yeah.
Both the man and woman, both divinities, they are everywhere. In fact, that's why we never say there is one God. We will say there is only God. Whatever is there is God, divine.
And we also...
You tell this to the young generation, he will understand what is sexism, how it is prevalent in the West, when it never existed here.
But there is one term which comes before pranyo mein sadbhavna ho, and that is adharm ka nash ho.
Yes, exactly.
And for a long time, we have neglected adharm ka nash. What better time and what better message to give to our youngsters?
Absolutely.
Okay. Yada yada hi dharmasya glanir bhavati bharata abhyutthanam adharmasya tadatmanam srajamyaham. Am I right, sir?
Yeah, you're right.
Okay. Thank you very much. This is not enough. We've run out of time. That's what's happened. It's just been so stimulating, intellectually, phenomenal. Let's just hope we can do it more often and sometime very, very soon. Namaste and thank you. Thank you very, very much. Thank you so much.
Which depend solely on circumstantial evidence do not end up getting proven in court of law. The Arushi case, the Talwar case, and of course most recently the Chawla case. Do you see this case also going a similar way?
Zaka, when you talk of these things, in fact, I get really perturbed that why is our criminal justice system so tough today? After 5 days, they've gone for a second remand. They don't have the body of the vital parts of the victim.
Yeah.
They don't have the mobile of Shraddha. They have not been able to recover the blood-stained clothes of Shraddha. And here you have the accused who is trying to take the police of Mumbai and Delhi for a ride. How do we know there were 35 pieces? Because he is telling. How do we know that the clothes were thrown in a garbage van? He is telling.
Yeah.
When Mumbai police called him for investigation, they did not tell Delhi police, they did not alert them that keep an eye on him. The moment the Mumbai police called him for investigation, he destroyed the mobile, sold it off on OLX, as sources say. So definitely, as you said, Arushi murder case, that the last scene theory was that there were 4 people in the house and morning there were 2 alive and 2 were not alive. And even in that, they could not prove the case and CBI had to go for a closure. Definitely here also you don't have any eyewitnesses. For 2 months this girl was dead and not one neighbor knew that she was not alive and nobody came to complain. Ultimately some friend who was watching. So the issue here is that there are no eyewitnesses, there is no direct evidence and the police has been unable to get the motive or the
so let me ask
the cleaver of the
Kaur,
knife, as we say, that is yet to be recovered.
Today the court, in addition to giving remand, also gave the go-ahead for narco analysis to be done on Aftab. Of course, his consent was sought for it. Narco analysis, Nirmal Kaur, as you very well know, is not admissible as evidence in a court of law. What is the police hoping to garner or decipher through this narco analysis? How is it helpful in a case such as this?
See, the police investigation is not very, now with this national investigation going on into it, people tend to have a view that investigations should be, it shouldn't be that difficult. It's highly painstaking work. It is like looking for a needle in a huge stack of hay. So investigation is not that easy. They have to try all the options. So perhaps that is why they've asked for narco tests, that maybe the truth serum or the narco test will be able to give them something, or at least, give some heebie-jeebies to the accused so that he comes out with some new or, he states some new things out of which maybe 10% truth comes out. So maybe that is what their hope is out of this test. But police has to try every avenue. They cannot let anything go. They
but
don't
ma'am,
know where
whatever he says,
where they'll get a piece of
just
evidence.
give me 10 seconds. Whatever he says, and so far Abba Singh is 100% right. Everything that we have known and put out in the public domain is because he has said it. He can very well turn around in court and say, I said none of this. Or I said all of this in duress, under duress.
Even if his confession is not admissible in a court of law at all.
Yeah.
So that has no value unless it leads to some findings or it leads to some evidence, solid evidence that can be tied up to link the murder with him. Otherwise, his saying anything has no value in a court of law. It's not even admissible under the Indian Evidence
Let
Act.
me ask Lalita Kumaramangalam. This is, I would say, an eye-opener for young women as well as for their families, particularly young women who, want to experience love, want to see people of their choice, and sometimes families oppose that. But look at the extent to which this case went. I mean, the family had cut off any kind of contact with Shraddha. Shraddha was not talking to them. The fact that she went missing, the family did not even know till 6 months later when the father went and filed a missing persons complaint. I mean, this to me is again one of the sides of the story which we all as parents need to be very, very alert about and aware of.
I agree, Zaka. The fact is, and I've been saying this very loudly for the last few days, that while my sympathies and empathy is with the family, I keep telling people that please don't cut off your daughters because they have done something that you don't like. Make sure that they have somebody, some sort of support system they can fall back upon. More than 90% of the time, domestic violence is never reported.
Yeah.
There is enough now to show that her friends have said very clearly that he used to beat her up, he used to stub his cigarette on her back, and this girl kept quiet. Unfortunately, girls are also taught to adjust, compromise. These words are terrible words, but we are always taught this in India. We are not taught to make a noise. We are not taught to talk to others. We are not taught to reach out and ask for help. And families too often shut off their children from the support that they may need in times like this. This poor child has paid the worst possible price for her reluctance and her incapacity perhaps as a human being because of whatever she's been through in many years from family, from this boy, God knows where else and whom else. She couldn't have even reached out to her friends. She never told them that she was being beaten up. Now this guy, this is the fear that even I have in this case, that this chap is not some ordinary killer. He's not just a pathological liar or anything like that. I think he's doing everything in a very calculated.
Good evening, hello and welcome to Brass Tacks. I'm Anusha Soni. The gruesome killing of Shraddha has sent shockwaves across the entire country. The sheer barbarity of the crime makes us cringe. But beyond the gory details and the shock value of this entire crime, there are some crucial questions that must haunt the investigation team. Not to forget that the entire case hinges upon the so-called confession of the accused, Aftab. He is the alleged killer and the witness against himself in this case. A confession which is right now not admissible in a court of law. There are no eyewitnesses, no murder weapon that has been recovered so far, and the crime happened months ago. With the case relying so heavily on circumstantial evidence, will the police authorities be able to build a watertight case and prove the conviction? Or this will be yet another case lost in sensationalism, where the prosecution fails to prove the case beyond reasonable doubt? First up, a special report. The details emerging from the Shraddha murder case continue to get murkier. The police has got further extension for 5-day remand. But the investigation moving forward is going to be an uphill task for the Delhi police. As expected, the investigation